Absolutely. I mean, you have to look at so many aspects of a founder when you're analyzing them in general. And I mean, there's just so many different facets to that because, I mean, of course, like looking at their entire business model in general, looking at the market that they're in and seeing if it's a good fit, like that's a huge part of it. But also just seeing if the founder is gravitational or not is huge. Because if the founder is gravitational,
all right, welcome back to another episode of Angels, Exits, and Acquisitions. I'm your host, Jeff Barnes with Angel Investors Network. And today we have an incredible episode with Savannah Kelley of PartnerTrack VC and Cassandra Global. And she has some amazing gems of information for both venture capitalists, investors, as well as startups. And she has an incredible journey, and she's done a lot of it really quickly in her life because I can tell that she loves to move forward, loves to be an innovator, loves to be a thought leader as well. So you're really going to learn a lot from this episode. As always, go ahead and share this and give us a comment. Let me know how you like it. Take care.
Welcome to Angels, Exits, and Acquisitions, the place to learn how to fund, scale, exit, and massively profit as an angel investor or entrepreneur. Brought to you by the Angel Investors Network. And now, here's your host, Jeff Barnes.
All right, welcome back to another episode of Angels, Exits, and Acquisitions. I'm your host, Jeff Barnes. I'm here today with Savannah Kelley. Savannah, how are you doing today?
Wonderful, wonderful. And yourself?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for being here. Really appreciate it. I'm looking forward to learning more about PartnerTrack VC, your company. But before we dive in, why don't you tell folks a little bit about yourself and how you got to where you are today?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So I started my career at a cybersecurity firm where it was a startup. It was a team of about 5 or 6, and I was one of their marketing and comms people. So basically, I helped them build the company from the ground up. I was focusing on like sales strategy, marketing strategy, and basically anything they needed me to do to help scale the company because it was a startup, obviously. So I got some network industry in the cybersecurity industry, which was a good place to start. So that was great. And then I moved from there into a company called Sage, which is an $11 billion accounting company. It's the back end of a lot of companies that people don't realize. It's based in the UK and the US. And Sage Intacct is one of the most popular products. So I worked for Sage at a very interesting time where they were actually acquiring 2 different companies at once. One of them being Bright Pearl, which I worked on specifically, and then also Inventory Planner, which I had my hand in as well. So within those companies, I did go-to-market and competitive intelligence, where I was able to learn a lot about product marketing, go-to-market, and just like the competitive landscape in general because of different pricing changes within integrating into the top umbrella. But integrating really all of those companies into a much larger organization through those acquisitions. So that was great. But otherwise, from Sage, I moved from there, and then I moved into a cybersecurity-focused VC fund called Strategic Cyber Ventures, and loved the team there. It was a really small team, and we were able to work on some amazing cybersecurity investments. Got to work in the cyber landscape there more and more, which was great, bringing in that startup knowledge in cybersecurity, bringing it into the VC space within there. So I work specifically in marketing and in SCV, which is great. And then I found basically like a lot of different networking groups on Slack to be involved in. And a couple of them being like Gen Z VC and a couple of the other like bigger organizations. And I was looking for gaps, right? And I was looking for gaps in those because I was just looking for amazing deals that I could find for my firm. And I saw there wasn't an amazing space for this, especially for like younger associates or senior associates. So I found someone in the group who wanted to start his own. It was called Next Gen VCs at the moment, but then it has now evolved into PartnerTrack, which PartnerTrack, me and the co-founder, Jonathan Henry, decided to co-found that, which is an amazing group for younger investors to get more involved in the VC community, connect, and also just like find co-investors and amazing deals. So that's why we started it. But we wanted a place that had no noise, right? We wanted a place where we could be competitive with some of the other channels too, because we don't allow soliciting. We don't allow any types of things like that. We're not afraid to kick people out if they do that. So we just want to make sure it's the most high quality channel for high quality people in the VC space. And it's really giving so many more opportunities to associates, senior associates, and principals. So basically, that's how we founded PartnerTrack. And now I'm currently working at Cassandra Global, which is a multi-strat opportunity fund. And I'm their general partner. And I'm focusing on fundraising and IR there. So that's where I came from. So yeah.
So you've been busy. Like, let's be honest. You have to accomplish all the things you've done at this stage in your life has been pretty remarkable. And so obviously you're a very driven person. You have a lot of ideas and a lot of ambition. And let's talk a little bit about that, because to get to a GP in a VC firm is not easy to begin with. Even if you want to start your own VC firm up, it's challenging because you have to go find all the LPs. You have to raise the capital yourself. Like it's a steep learning curve for a lot of people. So what were some of the challenges that you ran into along the way? Because it seems like you might have had your eye on the ball the whole way. Like you knew what you wanted. It sounds like marketing, go-to-market strategies. Did cybersecurity interest you from the very beginning? Was that something you fell into? Like, talk to us a little bit about that.
Kind of fell into it, honestly. So what happened was that I got a referral from my president of my college for a startup founder in the cybersecurity space. So that's kind of just where I got my career started in general. And it was one of the opportunities that could take me on quickly, where I could learn and grow really quickly as well. Like there were some other roles that I had my eye on that were more of the typical corporate roles, but I really wanted to get in and be a builder and build a company really from the ground up. So that's why like starting in cybersecurity was an interest, just because it was a startup in general that was willing to take me on. But in general, I mean, cybersecurity as a field is super interesting because I was able to work directly with the engineers. And something that I loved was I was interviewing the engineers all the time, getting as much information as I possibly could to be able to message the company in a way that was beneficial for our sales team. So that's why I was interested in cybersecurity in general. But yes, in general, been super busy. Yes, and landing the role at Cassandra Global has been such an honor, and it definitely is a difficult ladder to climb, especially getting into the VC space in general is really difficult. So just in general, like some advice there is, be really good at a trade, and there are other roles in VC other than investor. And if you can get a role as, head of platform or marketing or even like community engagement, that's a great path into VC. That's not the general, go to an Ivy school and hope to land at a fund, that kind of thing. So definitely merit goes a long way. And, reach out to funds in general and ask them if they have anything open, like either, contract work as like an analyst or scouting. That's another way in as well. But if you're able to prove that you can find amazing deals through a source like Partner Track or other like communities in general, then you're going to be valuable.
Absolutely. And I've always said to a lot of folks that I mentor is that, one of the things you can do to really ensure the success of your career is to make yourself more valuable than almost anyone else around you. And that's really, really challenging to do for a lot of people because they don't really know what that means. And it all comes down to the first thing, which is find a need that is out there. And that's also challenging to do because you may not know what the needs are. You may not understand that, but you kind of hit the nail on the head with giving people a tactical way. Go out there and ask, right? What are the things that they're struggling with? What are the things they could use help with? What are the things that they would value? And I was in the Navy a long time ago. And so we actually had an acronym for the Navy, which was never again volunteer yourself. And the reason why is because once you became really valuable in a role, you couldn't even progress beyond that role, right? It was very, very challenging because they say, well, you're an expert in this thing, so stick with this thing. And I find that that's also a challenge for a lot of folks. And I'd like for you to address this because it seems like you filled a need initially, marketing, go-to-market strategies, but then it led into cybersecurity and understanding this and interviewing the engineers, right? And what I have found when I say become more valuable than everyone else around you, provide more value than you charge for even, that's what we talk about in business, then all of a sudden the gateway, the doors open up wide. And it's because you find the next place that you can fill that need, the next valuable thing you can contribute. And it sounds like that's really what you've been doing throughout your career, which is going on to the next thing. And I would imagine you're like me in a certain sense where you get bored pretty easily. Once you've mastered something, you're like, okay, I want to do the next thing. That's not accurate?
Totally accurate. Totally accurate. I think that being well-rounded is so valuable because also if you can get your hands in every part of the business just by asking for work that no one else wants to do, then you can become so valuable so quickly. Like I remember one of the companies that I was doing a ton of like the invoices for finance as like a marketing person. And I was sitting back thinking like, wow, this is not really within my role at all, but I'm learning so much throughout this. It's going to be valuable at some point, maybe not now. Like this seems annoying right now. But like in the future, I mean, things like that are incredibly valuable. Yeah, and especially like working for startups in general, just ask to help in every single part of the business that you can, even if you've never done it before, and just learn quick. I mean, there's so many free resources out there right now and networks to join to where you don't have to be an expert in everything. You just have to be willing to ask an expert in those areas for help and find amazing advisors that will work with you on those kinds of things. Because, like learning about finance, learning financial modeling and stuff, you can do all of that on your own. You don't need to go to an Ivy school to learn it. So that's one thing that I think is just really important for people to know and learn is that to work in these areas, you just need to be willing to learn and be willing to take on a ton of work outside your role to just learn as much as you possibly can, especially early in your career, because it'll open up doors years later. Like it might take a while, but years later, those doors will open and much easier.
Absolutely, right. Has a really valuable insights right there, which is taking on roles and responsibilities that are not your own. I find that the most successful people that I've come across are people who do that, right? There's two different types of successful people in this realm. One is somebody that becomes the absolute expert at the one thing, and everybody knows them for that one thing, and they are the go-to, and they will do that, right? And that person is very, very valuable, and they can become valuable inside of an organization. They can become valuable to a community. They can become valuable to a business or a country even, right? However, the other person that can be very, very successful is the person that can find a way to, like that spider web of all the challenges out there and figure out what the potential and possible solutions are. But you can't do that without knowing what all the other resources, all the other pieces of the puzzle might be. And you can only figure that out by taking on additional responsibilities. Like you were saying, being in marketing, most people in marketing have no clue about the financial side of a business. They understand maybe return on ad spend. They understand cost per click, all that stuff. But they don't necessarily understand the nuances of taxes and financing and how to make sure that the business is running smoothly on the back end, right? And so I find that's really, really important for a lot of folks. So I would love for you to talk about how did you go from being in the world of startups, which a lot of folks, when they're in this world of you went from a corporate world to startup world, and then ultimately into a VC world. Now, the corporate to the startup world, that part I get, because people will find themselves with a corporate job because they've been conditioned to get good grades, go to school, get a good job, get a good career, right? A lot of folks fall into that narrative. But then they realize this is not for me. And the exciting, fast pace, especially when we're younger, the idea of going to a startup, something with a really big win at the end, and also we don't have a massive amount of personal responsibility and obligations, it's a lot easier to do that. So going to the startup realm, that makes sense. But most folks who find themselves in the startup realm don't necessarily go from there into the VC realm, right? A lot of times they're at odds with each other. So what was it for you that made you think, you know what, learning more about the VC world, the VC ecosystem and culture could be a good fit?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, my story of, starting in a startup where I got to wear every hat in the business and I got to think about everything all at once. And then going into a more cushier, like corporate role. I think my corporate role was still a little bit more startup-y in general because we had acquired two different startups. So I was working directly with their teams. So it still felt kind of like a startup in some ways, but working under the bigger Sage umbrella in general was very corporate. But in general, it was some different transitions, but I really like change. I like change and I like to see different parts of different businesses because I like to see things, in a big lens and like see how the world works. And knowing from the inside, like how each one of these umbrellas works before getting into the VC space and before getting into the multi-strat opportunity fund was super valuable because now I can look at all those businesses and have a better lens for it. But yeah, it was definitely a big change in like schedules and like shifting and just time schedules. Like definitely working in corporate in general, your schedule feels a lot lighter than it does in a startup because going from working 120 hours a week to working more of like a normal schedule felt a little bit slower for me, which was not an amazing transition. So that's why like working at a VC fund was better too, because I still got the startup side. And I totally get what you're saying with VCs and startups being at odds. Which I think they gave me a good edge too, to look at our startup founders and know kind of what they're going through because I had been in this space where I'd seen my own founder, like going through like what he was going through with his startup, like they're finding funding or working with VCs. I'm glad I saw that first before going into the VC space because it gave me much more empathy towards it. And now working at the Multi-Strat Opportunity Fund and eventually picking those emerging managers and picking those startups, it gives me a better lens to see within like a normal VC fund how that works, and also within like a normal startup how that works.
Before continuing, please subscribe and share this video to help us reach more people and stay notified of our latest releases. Now, let's continue watching and learning.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that having the perspective of what it takes to really get a startup off the ground, we hear about the overnight successes that take 15, 20 years to get there, and people don't hear or see, and the typical iceberg model, right? Where all the hard work is at the bottom and takes forever. And no one sees that. They only see the shiny example at the very top. And the grueling times where, you're wondering if you're going to make payroll. You're wondering if who you have to let go, or is this person going to leave me even though because I can't afford to pay them, but I really need them to grow. Those things are really, really important to go through as a startup. And I agree with you 100% on the investor side, having a little bit of that empathy because you've seen it and you've experienced it really helps when you start talking to the startups. Have you found that that's a good filtering mechanism for you on the VC side when you're looking at these founders?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, you have to look at so many aspects of a founder when you're analyzing them in general. And I mean, there's just so many different facets to that because, I mean, of course, like looking at their entire business model in general, looking at the market that they're in and seeing if it's a good fit, like that's a huge part of it. But also just seeing if the founder is gravitational or not is huge. Because if the founder is gravitational and they are extremely obsessed with what they're doing, and like even if they're not necessarily an extreme like expert in what they're doing, but if they're sincerely obsessed with what they're doing, and if they can get people around them that are as obsessed with the idea as they are, that's super valuable. That's a really good filtering mechanism for like me and my teams is can they bring the experts in to come and help them? Because there's some founders who like to live on an island where they think that, they know what they know and like they can run their idea and they don't need as much support either from their VCs or like from other like subject matter experts in like their field or like outside their fields to come and give them support. Those are the founders who are harder to work with because when you want to give them support either in sales or in marketing or just in general, like sending in experts to, if you need someone to do something, like there's someone in our network who can help you. Or just in general, they're already bringing in those people that are extreme experts in the area that can come in and help them, I think is really important to look for in the beginning.
Absolutely. Yeah. The ability to build a team and be a leader is honestly, from what I've seen, the hardest thing to teach because it does take a certain amount of emotional intelligence that I found that a lot of folks that are left brain and really, eyes on the prize of creating the technology or building the thing, the product, the service, that's a really, really hard part. So emotional intelligence is important and being that leader and building a great team around them. So that's definitely one of the things that we look at as well. So let's talk a little bit about why you think it's important for the VC system ecosystem to create a culture to bring in some of these, not going to say young startups, but maybe the young investors, right? Why do you feel that that's a really important skill set for these VCs to start embracing?
Yeah, that's an amazing thing to bring up. So in general, we can talk about two different lenses of that, and that's funding the younger startups, like the younger startup owners, but also just giving more opportunities in general for VCs to hire on like different types of associates, like two different conversations there that I love. Because like for the partner track lens, right? Like giving more opportunities to find like merit-based candidates for VC is super important. Because the normal like aspects of hiring in VC, I think is a bit broken. Because usually the only way to hire at a VC is like going from top schools or like finding exited founders. But just in general, like finding better ways to screen candidates with like different traits that they have to make them a good VC, because a good VC in general is an amazing consultant. And I think people forget that a lot is, you're hands-on with the founders. And if you're not able to be hands-on with the founders and be extremely personable with them and actually help them grow their business and get them to the scale that you want them to be, then VC might not be for you. So that's one part of it that I think is important, is to look at candidates a different way in VC. But in general, like funding maybe like younger fund managers or like younger like CEOs and stuff in general, extremely important for diversity, because I think that, if you can find people who are talented, they can grow really quickly and they're really obsessed and passionate about their business, like definitely doesn't matter like which background that they come from. Like if they're obsessed with it, then they're going to figure it out if they're intelligent and they're at the level that they need to be for that. So definitely passionate about like funding younger fund managers and younger startup leaders as well, because I know the space. I know it's difficult. People believe you can do what you can do, but if they're willing to get in and figure it out and find experts to help them, absolutely.
And so, how do you cultivate a culture like that? And let's look at it from both lenses, right? The VC that has billions of dollars under management and they're already existing, they've been around for 20, 30, 40 years or more, and they have a culture. And they realize, just like you were saying, they have this culture of hiring really smart folks from the Ivy League schools that are great at financial analysts and things like that. But in my experience, a lot of those folks that they hire are really good at filling a role, but they're not necessarily good at the big picture of what, like you were saying, the market looks like or why we think this would be a good fit. They just build a whole bunch of models, give a whole bunch of data to the senior managers, the partners to say, hey, go make the decision, right? Versus, so there's one side, it was like, how's that older VC, VC company, I should say, with a certain level of maturation, look at this and make a very valuable and informed decision as to why they should do this. And then the other side of it is the person who's looking at starting up a VC firm, right? Should they go with this approach, or should they go with the Ivy League school, the standard model they have, or should there be a combination of that? What are your thoughts on that?
Great question. I think in general, like we are lacking tools, right, to do merit-based hiring in VC and hedge funds and everything as well, right? Because how can you prove that a VC is going to be a good VC if the schools aren't really teaching it? They kind of are. Like there's clubs and stuff in general that are decent to hire out of because, you can either manage their endowment or like things like that. But in general, just looking for someone who is actually really interested in startups and they love founders and they love innovation in general. And they have lots of knowledge around each one of the markets, especially, of course, the ones that you're looking to hire them into, whether you're a climate tech focused VC or deep tech or, whatever your focus is, like finding a good expert there too is always helpful. But in general, I just think we all need to be building better tools as well to project investments and just to see how, people would be as good investors. That's why angel investors in general make good VCs as well, because, they've had practice. So they've had practice and you can see their returns. So in general, that's one of my go-tos there. But otherwise, merit-based hiring in VC is difficult. It's difficult because you're right. Like these funds already have all these structures in place, and they already have like their lineup of their teams, because VCs don't have huge teams generally. Because you don't need tons of analysts, you don't need tons of associates. You just really need a key few who can work with your startups. But also hiring on amazing venture partners to help with this as well, to increase your reach of your network for your startups is really important to help with that as well, because it is harder to bring on new team members and either move people out or move people in. That's difficult. You can always bring on better venture partners to help support your startups better as well. So that's a tactic there too.
So what I'm hearing then from what you just finished on there is being able to build your network, your Rolodex, right? And knowing where these people play in what your goals are, what maybe your clients' goals are, and things like that. Mm-hmm. And that's been a big focus of what you've done over your career, right? So how valuable do you feel the ability to build a network is?
It's extremely valuable. It's extremely valuable. I learned that through creating Partner Track, because a team of 400 of some of the best investors in the world, from like each one of them being really from different firms too. It has been so valuable to be able to bring in opportunities for them and to constantly create value for them. Something that I do is I would always meet with each one of our people in our network on the call And I would always ask them, like, who can I enter you to? Like, what do you need? What do your startup founders need? Like, how can we best support you in that? Because that's the whole point of the entire network, is just creating value for them. So, I mean, I can't tell you how much time that I've spent like giving so many intros, and I can't even imagine the network effects that are not even known of that, of like, people finding their co-investors. We've had a lot of that. People finding just like different resources for their startups is huge too. Because, if I have a friend of a friend who can, get into the procurement side of Google, like that's a major win for a startup to get some sort of introduction there. And I've seen that happen a lot of times too with like a lot of the huge companies, because of me just growing my network, getting to know people, making friends in all of these different industries, and providing so much value to them, because that's the way that it works, right? Like I'm not transactional. It's a big part of like who I am. Like I will never ask anything of someone for me to give them an intro or for me to hand them off like something that they need. Always want to create value for free, because it pays off in dividends in the future, because like creating a good network of good people just makes business way more fun, and just makes it to where like you can help so many people over time. Because my goal, I want to create innovation. Like I want to foster innovation in all the markets that I'm a part of. And if I can get startups into Google as a customer, if I can get them into Apple as a customer, and if I can help so many founders get their businesses off the ground and just help decrease that 90% that fail, I mean, that's just a win for my career in general. So
I love that. And I will tell you that, I run Angel Investors Network, right? That's our goal as well, as creating this network. And it gets challenging, right?
Yeah.
They say that at the highest level, people really can only support deep relationships with about 5 folks, really deep relationships. And I still believe that's true. But you can have pretty good relationships with hundreds. However, the key to that is consistency and follow-up and being present. And that's really, really challenging. I find a lot of folks, they struggle with that, right? Because myself as well, I will go to an event. I was just at an event recently, and I had nothing to do with this event aside from maybe bringing a couple clients to this, but that wasn't part of my normal network. And I get there and like 40, 50 people that I knew at this network, and it was great. I hadn't seen some of them in a long time. And I think the power of having that network is priceless. I think that, just like you said, you never know what's going to come of that, because the connection you might have made 5 years ago, a good friend, that you went to school with them, you did business with them at one point, and then you kind of forgot about it. But as long as you end everything, I shouldn't say end, but as long as you continue to leave the door open, then you really have an opportunity to continue fostering that relationship. However, I feel that most people really struggle with that. Are there any keys or tools or strategies that you use to really ensure that you keep your network strong?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one thing about networking that people get wrong is they always go into a conversation with an ask. And that's not good. It's not good. The ask, I guess like the ask in general should always be like, how can I provide value to them? How can I make them feel better at the end of the call? Like, how can I give value to them? And if you can't, then like then you better find something, obviously. But just in general, just meeting with good people and making friends in like multiple different industries that are aligned with you, that are aligned with like your goals. So like say your goals is to grow an entire VC fund, like meeting with multiple different founders and just like meeting with as many of them as you can is really important, obviously. And I think with the networking too, like one thing that people don't do is they schedule their calls to be too long. This is kind of a hack, is that if you do just 15-minute calls and you can efficiently run your time just on 15-minute slots with as many people as you can, and get them on reoccurring calls as well, to where you can foster those relationships over time. Like you can have a 15-minute call with someone that, you might build a business with eventually in the future, like every 2 weeks or so. It's a good cadence. It's a good cadence because it's a short amount of time. You can get some good FaceTime with people. You can really get a lot of information both ways, like in 15 minutes. So it's a good way to keep fostering your network without it being too time intensive on your day. But that also just depends on like who you are as a person, if you like more calls or not. Personally, I like to do just like multiple 15 minutes a day, because that just like works for me. Like I talk fast. So 15 minutes is a lot of content. But yeah, fostering your network can be difficult and it can be daunting because if you go in thinking, I need to get this $100,000 sale from this person in this call for the first call, it's gonna be really daunting. But if you go into it thinking like, I just want to provide value to them and get to know them as a person because, as people, we're at work, 8 hours, 16 hours for me really a day. So, getting to know people, making good friends, and then just trying to help each other out is just the basis of it. So just taking the pressure off of networking and just thinking of it more as like making friends and providing value just helps create a better lens to where it's not as scary and daunting. And it just makes it more fun in general.
I love that. And we coach a lot of our clients that you have to dig the well before you need the water, right?
Yep.
Because that's exactly what you're saying. A lot of folks struggle with this. And whenever I'm coaching folks on raising capital, I have a slide up there of a beautiful woman in a red dress. And they like that. We said, raising capital is like dating, right? You never go up and you ask to marry the person the very first time you meet them, right? Guy, girl, otherwise doesn't matter. You don't ask them to marry you when you first meet. And when people are raising capital, I find that they do this a lot. They go to a networking event with an ask, with a goal. I've got to get this done. If I don't do this, if I don't make this thing happen, it's not worth it. And that the whole energy, the vibe is completely off, right? You're putting out the wrong energy versus what you're saying. And I do get a lot of the metaphysical of raising capital, right? You have to attract it in. And if you're trying to attract in an opportunity, you're trying to attract in a job, you're trying to attract in, raising capital. Some people, it's, trying to attract the mate into their lives, right? You have to become the person that people want to do business with, they want to be with. And how do you do that? Well, you go in, just like you were saying, don't go in with an ask. Go in with, again, just like I was saying earlier, and you reiterated as well perfectly, which is, how can I provide value? How can I add value to this relationship, to this conversation, to whatever it might be, so that I will be seen as a valuable person they want to do business with versus I really need this person's help. And there are ways to structure that, of course, but if that's the energy you go in with, a lot of people put their guard up because they're saying, hey, I'm here to network and learn, right? Not necessarily to give, to support you and fix all your problems today, right? So I really love that. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, no, people are being asked of things all the time. We have fatigue for it. People are asking, you for a job. They're asking you to buy something. They're asking this, they're asking that in their personal lives and their professional lives. So if somebody walks up to them and they're like, I just want to get to know you as a person. And if like something aligns here and we're aligned, then great. But if not, no pressure. It's like a sigh of relief for everyone in the conversation. And it makes it easier because when people are more comfortable, they're, more willing to actually share what they're doing. And, you can get to know them so much better. And it's not as like professional and, clunky. So just in general, it's more efficient, timely, and it's just better. It's a better conversation in general.
So we're almost out of time here, but that just brought up one little thought that I had. And I'd love for us to end on this, which is people talk about an elevator pitch all the time. And I kind of hate it because of the way that a lot of people structure their elevator pitch is, I'm looking for support. I'm looking for help. I need you to do something for me. And they position their elevator pitch as a way to get a response, elicit a response, whether it's good, bad, or ugly, about how you can help me. So do you have a take on elevator pitches, on how people should probably do them better?
Yeah, that is a great question. Elevator pitches in general, they need to be more about your experience and what you're doing, right? Not really even the ask. It's just, what have you done in the past? Why did you like it? Keep it positive. And then what are you doing now? And also the faster you can do it is kind of the better too, because it's an elevator pitch that's supposed to be fast. But I feel like a lot of people, they don't practice their elevator pitches enough, or they don't talk to enough people using their elevator pitch to make it more productive, right? Because I've done mine so many times. When I was starting Partner Track, of course, I was on the call with, 10, 20, 30 investors a week, just the same thing over and over and over, like how I started in a startup versus how I got to where I am now, over and over again. So within the practice, then I was able to also just read the person across from me. And I'm like, are they taking in what I'm saying? And is it making them feel good? And are they able to share about themselves in a proper way after? Or is it awkward afterwards and they don't know what to ask because I wasn't clear enough? So really just practicing is something that people will tell you to practice your elevator pitch, obviously. But just basically doing as many of those 15-minute meetings as you can to run off your elevator pitch to a ton of different people from different sectors, different industries, and just tailoring it on the go too. Like making sure that, you have them talk first and to try to get them share their experience first so that when you do your elevator pitch, you can kind of tailor it to something that they would be interested in. And also just their communication style and tone is important too, because sometimes people, they talk a little bit slower and you might need to slow down your speech a little bit so that they can absorb it quicker. Or maybe sometimes they are more laid back. So you can adjust your tone to that as well. So just adjustments in tone and delivery, just slight nuances in an elevator pitch, super important. And also just being able to practice as much as you can for as many different ICPs as you can, super important.
What do you mean by ICPs? People may not know what that means.
Yeah. It's basically your ideal customer, your ideal person that you're going to be talking to, whether that be a fund manager or whether that be an ideal customer, someone at Google, someone not at Google, enterprise versus a smaller customer, just across the board, just as many of them as you can, because the more practice that you get, the better that you'll get if you just run into somebody in person, that you'll already have a general language and tone that you can use with each kind of different person that you talk to.
Beautiful. I love that. And so important. It aligns with a lot of things we teach folks, which is know thy customer, know thy investor, know the person you're going after. So this has been wonderful, Savannah. I could go a lot longer with you. I really appreciate this conversation and would love to learn more about what you guys are doing over there. And why don't you tell folks how they can find you, what you're working on right now, and what makes you most excited about what you guys are doing?
Yeah, absolutely. So best place to find me, usually just LinkedIn is the best place to find me. You can DM me on there. But I can also put some of my contact information if we do that as well. But yeah, Cassandra Global, we're doing some great things over there. Basically, we're a multi-strat opportunity fund. We have 4 different funds, one of them being a VC/fund-to-fund model, one of them being a venture debt model, and then another in real estate. So we're focusing a lot on those right now. So we're raising for that. We have 250 million AUM right now committed. But we're looking to increase that up to the billion in the future, of course. So really just growing a lot there. We're building out our teams. It's a really exciting time at Cassandra. I joined about a month ago as their general partner. So just really excited to see the growth there and the work that we're doing in emerging markets. So yeah, lots more to come there. And I can always share some information about that in the podcast notes as well.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Savannah. We'll make sure we put all of this information in the show notes as well as how you can get in touch with Savannah on LinkedIn and at Cassandra Global as well. So Savannah, thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate the time and really looking forward to hear what everybody else's thoughts are out there in the podcast world, whether you're on YouTube or listening to this on Spotify or any of the other podcast channels. Give us a like, give us a comment, and be sure to share this because it's an incredible episode and I have plenty of notes here myself. So thank you so much.
Great. Thanks, Chad.